Namo Buddhaya. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'm still recovering from the Dhammachakra recitation. I was downstairs and I was completely taken in. Give me a few minutes to come back to planet Earth. And what you see now, I heard as I was coming up, those lovely things that were said about President Biden, about time to give up. Okay. But thank you for this lovely opportunity. As the last speaker, I thought maybe what I might do is round up, yeah, round up what you have been going through, and I would like to end up, of course, by the Four Noble Truths and what I understand from the whole program. Okay, let me share that with you. Okay, and here it says here, the graduated discourses of the Buddha. Yeah, what does this mean? Graduated discourse. You see, when the Buddha became enlightened, yeah, we tend to think that he had all the answers. Yeah, that's not true. It's not when the Buddha was alive for the 45 years after his enlightenment, yeah, he was a normal person. He was a human being. All right. And he did all the things that normal human beings do. But when there was a special need to address himself to a certain point, then he would address himself to that and then come back to normal life. We tend to think of him walking around with Las Vegas lights all flashing all over the. It's not true. He was a lovely human being he even had moments of irritation. He said, "Don't disturb me. Today I want to rest." This kind of thing. Okay, so but having said that, yeah, especially listening to the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, to, in my mind, one of the most beautiful of all this. All are beautiful, but this one, and especially the way it was read today, it was recited today. Thank you very much. I thought it was your voice. Was it? Yeah. Thank you. Right. So graduated is when the Buddha had a problem. The problem was this. Let me go back a little. Maybe yesterday, Sister Buddhini told you about this. What happened before the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra? The Buddha was enlightened, all right? And having been enlightened, two options came up to him. One option was, I have spent so much of time. It is so difficult for me to have understood this such a complex thing called the Dharma. Yeah, that one word is so complex. It took me so much of trouble, so many lifetimes of pain and suffering, and trying to explain it to another person is going to be a waste of time. So I may as well. That was the first option, to become what we call a Pacceka Buddha. Pacceka Buddhas, as you know, were silent Buddhas. They are Buddhas, yeah, fully enlightened Buddhas, yeah. They become Buddhas with they are special in that they discover the Buddha for themselves. That's one important thing, that you have to discover it for yourself. Lesser beings like you and me, we listen to the Dhamma, and from the Buddha, we become enlightened. That means it's a second rate thing. It's a Buddhahood. It is Buddhahood, the highest level, Samma Sambuddha, but because they lack the ability to teach. They didn't develop, they didn't go in that direction. So they become what they call silent Buddhas. So there are silent Buddhas, then there are Savaka Buddhas. Savaka Buddhas are like you and me, listen to the Buddha, understand the Dharma, and through their teaching, we become enlightened. So that's a Savaka Buddha. And the third level of Buddha is the uh, uh, Samma Sambuddha. Samma Sambuddha learns with no help from anybody, and then they have the ability also to teach. Very, very rare. And to be born at a time when the teaching is still available, like just now, that's the feeling that went through me. How, how privileged we are to be able to hear this 2,600 years down the line. Yeah, and here we are listening to it one more time. So all of this. So the first option was, it's too difficult, I won't teach. The second option was, maybe there are a few people in Serdang, okay, with a little bit of dust in their eyes. Maybe it will be worthwhile. Maybe they will. And because of that, we have been able to receive. So the Buddha decides. To cut a long story short, the Buddha decides, and he says, okay, now whom can I teach? Who are these people with little dust in their eyes? And the first three names that came to him were his immediate teachers. He had gone to them and they had taught him a lot, but they couldn't teach him about enlightenment. They stopped shop. They themselves were, and so he left them. And when he gained enlightenment with his own effort, that's important. Yeah, when he gained enlightenment, he said, whom do I teach? First, out of gratitude, I will teach these, but he discovered they had passed away. And so it was too late. And then he said, okay, who's next? Then he remembered again out of gratitude, he remembered that for 6 years, while he was struggling to find the answers to enlightenment, before he could find that, there were 5 ascetics who looked after him. They were sincere, they were very good people, and they tried to follow what the Buddha taught and looked after him. But they, because of their lack of understanding, when the Buddha discovered the middle path and he stopped torturing his body, they lost their faith in him because they came from a tradition of fasting and penance and punishment. And the Buddha rejected that at that moment. So they lost their faith in him and they went away. We say that in a sense that was good. In fact, the Buddha was happy that they left because they were a disturbance. Yeah, to gain enlightenment, that we all must know, to gain enlightenment is something that is very deeply personal. We are all in a group here. We are all practicing the Buddha Dhamma as taught by the Buddha, but we are doing it as a group. But the journey towards enlightenment, the journey towards arahantahood is private. It's a personal undertaking that you have to take yourself. And that was one of the lessons the Buddha learned at that point. Okay, now they have left, and as you know, he gains enlightenment, and then he decides, I will now, out of gratitude, these are people with little dust in their eyes, they will understand. So he wants to know where they are. He knows that they are about 150 miles away in Varanasi. He was enlightened in Bodh Gaya. So he walks. He had plenty of time. So he took his own time walking the average of about 20 kilometers a day. Yeah, he didn't have to any timetable to fulfill. So he took his time going. Now on the way, on the way to Varanasi to look for the 5 ascetics, he meets another ascetic. And this ascetic looks at him. He's 35 years old. He has just gained enlightenment. He is beautiful. He's glowing. Yeah. And this ascetic looks at him and says, you look very unusual. You don't look human. And then in Indian tradition asking, In Chinese tradition, when you meet somebody for the first time, you say, "Have you eaten?" Okay. In the Indian tradition, they ask among ascetics, who is your teacher? And this is significant. And the Buddha gives this answer. A few minutes ago, I said they had to find the answer by themselves. Okay. Now he says, known are the things to be known. Everything that needs to be known, I know. Everything that has to be concerned with happiness, I know. All the questions about the universe, I know. All this I discovered by myself. All right. Somebody calls it a few bombastic statements. Right? All this I know. Having done all this by myself, who can I call my teacher? Aku saja. And significantly, like all of you, significantly, Upaka looks at him and says, handsome fella, but a bit off. That's it. And shaking his head, he says, it may be so. It may be so. Very important point. Yeah. Here is, now I can claim to you, I know everything. How would you know what I know? You see, you are asking, this is what happens with every other religion. This is the difference between Buddhists and other religions, right? Where in every religion, you are asked to put your faith. God says, I am God. God says, I created the world. God says, I end the world, everything. But there is no way of knowing. And quite rightly, this ascetic, they had no way of proving that this Buddha is what he claims to be. So he walks away. So it's also a credit to the Buddhists that the first thing that our Buddha didn't work. He walked away. He didn't convert him. And insignificantly, the Buddha does not stop there and say, hey, first one, so like, oh, you want to try again, anybody else? No. The Buddha took that and he walked on, and he walked on. Then he meets the five ascetics. And when he meets the first ascetic, he does not demand faith. He does not say, you must believe me. He takes a different tactic, which is very important for us. That tactic is, he does not say that I am so and so and so and so and so. On the other hand, he says, the Buddhist attitude, the scientific attitude, look around you. All that you can see is what there is. You have no other way of knowing anything about heaven or hell or whatever. Yeah? So the Buddhist starting point is not something to be believed out of faith, but something that demands your observation. He says the first noble truth. The first noble truth is there is suffering. Not you must suffer. Other religions say you must suffer because you disobeyed God and whatever, and therefore, as a punishment, you must suffer. Buddhists don't say that. The difference between Buddhism and other religions is, in other religions, people pray to be free from danger. In Buddhism, we say we cannot be free from danger. We pray to be free from suffering. Bila jatuh tangga, jangan timpa tangga pula. You see, that there is suffering. This is a condition of the universe. Don't expect it to be anything else. You are born, you grow old, you fall sick, you die. What you want, you don't get. What you don't want chases after you. These are, nobody can run away from this. All that we can do is, like the lotus flower, stay above the suffering. So while other religions pray to be free from danger, we pray to be free from suffering. You will notice what a difference, and the lotus flower symbolizes that. Yeah? That this is the approach. So when the Buddha meets these 5 ascetics without asking for faith and devotion, he says, look around you. There is suffering. There is suffering. Not you must suffer. Big difference. Is it? And how do you live with a state of this suffering? Okay, so that is his starting. So this time they cannot put their tongue out and say, maybe so. You are born, you fall sick, you grow old, you die. Yeah? And there's so many forms of suffering. Is there anyone here who is exempted from that? Nobody. So they cannot now walk away. He has said there is suffering. All right. So now this is what this whole thing about the graduated discourses of the Buddha. Right. And here the when the Buddha started to teach, he had, as a great teacher, easily the greatest teacher that ever lived. Because when you teach, you need a method. That's why we call it a discourse. The method of teaching. One method of teaching that we used to use, not so much, whack the fella, doesn't study, whack him, doesn't study, send him to tuition. Okay? And tuition is the worst form of suffering, by the way. Anyway, but the point is that the Buddha needed to know that I'm going to teach. I've got so many different types of people, including now these 5 ascetics who are in front of me. All right. Even today, having been a teacher all my life, I still believe that you cannot force a child to learn. You must make him want to learn. You can bring the horse to the water, but you cannot force the horse to drink. You must make the horse thirsty first. And this is the Buddha's method throughout. This is the graduated one. And he also was a great teacher in that when he approached his subjects, he knew, unlike our education system worldwide, we put all 40 of those little fellows in there and teach them the same rubbish that we teach them year after year. The Buddha wasn't like that. Before the Buddha began to teach, he assessed the capability of the learner. What are the attitudes of this learner? Where does he come from? What's his intelligence level? What is his background? So I must know him. Just by example, Sigala Vada Sutra. Here's this guy, Sigala, yeah, who is a good guy, very filial, right? And he is doing what his father told him, practice bowing to the 6 directions, doing the ritual. In Hinduism, we have it. In Chinese Buddhism, we have it. We do certain rituals to honor our departed. What does the Buddha do? This is a good boy. Yeah, he is a filial boy. Yeah, he's not wrong. I don't tell him you're stupid. Nothing. Just says the same thing that your father told you has a new meaning. Instead of bowing to the north, bowing to the west, east, south, and instead of bowing like this is just physical exercise, your father did not expect you to bow physically. Bow means pay respects to. When you bow to the east, you pay respects to your parents. Bowing physically to the east, no use. But if you bow to your parents, why is parents the east? Your life, the sun begins the day in the east. The day begins in the east. Your life begins with your parents. So east, right? Then your teachers, then your friends to the north, and so on. Okay, so at the end of that discourse, yeah, the Sigala Vada Sutra, yeah, Sigala only comes to the level of understanding to be a good filial piety. The Buddha did not teach Sigala the higher levels of philosophy and all that. Sigala was not ready. But to come back, I'm running short of time. To come back, when the Buddha approached the five ascetics, he knew what their level was. He knew they were good people. He knew they were pure. He knew that they were very much into torturing the body. He knew all of this. He knew the nature of his student. So graduated discourse. For these guys, I only go this level. For Sigala, I only go for this level. For Sariputta, one line, enough. You see, for Sariputta, just one line, and years and years and years of development, yeah, culminates in that line. And the Buddha knew that. Throughout the Buddha's career, he met different people and he approached different people in different ways. And I sort of come there. Now, our own practice of Buddhism, yeah, it starts in different places. The Buddha approaches differently. All right. And the easiest of which, the stage one, the foundation. When you want to become a Buddhist, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they come new to Buddhism, they jump too fast and they expect too much to do and they lose faith. Buddhism is not like that. Buddhism is a graduated. It's like walking into the ocean. Yeah. On the beach, it's very shallow. You only get your toes wet. But as you go deeper, the water gets deeper and deeper, and it becomes more and more complicated. But you go slowly down. Buddhism is like that. You start off with the basics. And the basics is what the Buddha himself had practiced for millions and millions of lifetimes. Yeah, millions of lifetimes, the Buddha had practiced what are called the 10 paramis, the 10 virtues, the 10 perfections. And the easiest of those is dana. We know that. Yeah, practice generosity. Right? At any level of understanding, we can practice them. So that is our. So when the Buddha starts to teach us and tells us to practice Buddhism, we start with dana. But if we have the right understanding of dana, yeah, a lot of people unfortunately give dana with an expectation of a reward. Either a lot of people give dana this life, so next life they'll be rich or go to heaven or whatever. But if you have the right understanding as given by the Buddha, if you practice dana to destroy your ego, to understand there is nothing, I don't even own my body. How can I own anything? When I see that, what I have has no meaning. So I give it away. And when I give it away, I bring joy and happiness to others. Okay? So that's easy to follow. You don't need to have a PhD for that. Okay? But you don't stop there. Graduated means you go beyond that. Then you go to the next level, sila. Sila, again, very basic, 5 precepts. Very, anybody can practice it. Don't need a huge amount of understanding. All right? But sila is vitally important to proceed because sila is the disciplining of the body. But we Buddhists do not stop at disciplining the body. Now, what you are doing now is disciplining the body, sitting down. This is no fun. Okay, worse, bigger test listening to me. Okay, and that, but when you do that, you are ready for the next vital Buddhist practice, virtue. That your virtue leads you to samadhi, concentration. All the dana and all the sila you do is not the end. That is what prepares you to control your mind. And that is the goal of Buddhists, controlling the mind, samadhi. All right. And it is when you control your mind that understanding comes. That is our goal. Our goal is not to go to heaven. So dana and sila, yeah, are preliminary steps before you go on to the higher levels. Okay. So, and the Buddha, throughout all his discourses, he went through these levels. Okay. So you have stage 1, and then the stage 2, yeah, you have the drawbacks of dana, sila, and I had a lot of problem understanding sagga, heaven. Yeah, you have generosity, then you have virtue, then you have heaven. It doesn't fit. Then I figured it out. It's not heaven. It is your dispensation towards heaven, your understanding of heaven. You're doing things to go to heaven. In Buddhism also we say that if you do all of these things, you can go to heaven. But our goal is not to go to heaven. So if there are people who are like Nanda, there are people who do things because they want to go to heaven. That's not bad, but that's not the goal. That's not the goal. That's only one of the earlier levels. Okay, so that leaves us to the intermediate stage of the drawbacks of sensuality. In the case of Nanda, the Buddha's teaching, yeah, does not condemn sensuality, but it says that sensuality is one of your enemies that you should try to get away from. What is sensuality? The 5 senses. Yeah, the 5 senses. Don't, how's it? It is not bad. It is not sinful to give in to the sensuality, but they are things that lead you behind, that distract you. So virtue and dana are necessary to get rid of all of these in order to move forward to align yourself towards the right path. Okay, so you have the sensuality. Then, of course, dana has to do with renunciation, nekama. Why renunciation? As Buddhists, the less we cling on to things of the senses, the more free we are to develop the mind. So again, it goes back to the senses. All right? And then, of course, where we are today, finally, we come to the advanced stage, graduated. That's the meaning of it. It's all graduated. Okay, which brings us to my topic today. Took me a long time to get there. Okay. Okay. Right. Now we come to the next. Okay. By understanding the drawbacks of sensuality, you get that? That means why we take the 5 precepts. We understand why we don't kill, why we don't steal, why we don't give in to the pleasures of the senses. We understand because these will make us more and more tied down to this sensual world. Yeah, sensual world. it's when we learn to understand, when we understand why, it's easy to give up. If we give up because we are afraid of God, we don't really understand. So we churi. We continue to do it. But if this dana, this thing that I want to give away, I want it for myself. But if I want it for myself, I know that I'm only pandering to my own needs. But if I understand I cannot own this and I give it away, there is no sense of suffering involved. Very important. No sense of suffering. Whenever we give away anything, there should be joy. And that joy should come from understanding. See? So why? The Buddha said, his teaching is all about wisdom and understanding. All right. It's all, when we practice with understanding, there is no pain. So Buddhists, that's why Buddhists are happy people. They're happy people because they know how to give away. They know why they give away. All right. Practicing renunciation, we are shifting ourselves towards understanding the realities of life. We are moving towards dana, sila, samadhi. Okay. The basic teachings of the Buddha are anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is again why it's important to talk about graduation, gradual teaching. Okay. You will notice that when you go in one direction, the Buddha will tell you, I teach you only anicca, dukkha, anatta. Another place, he teaches you the Four Noble Truths. Another place, he teaches the Eightfold Path. And then you say, hey, Manala, where are you going? A lot of us have this confusion. But if we understand that there is only one Dharma, and there are many entry points to that Dharma. Yeah, some people are naturally, they don't mind giving away. Some people find it difficult to practice dana, but they can practice some other thing. So what is it that your nature leads to you to? So start there as a starting point and then move forward. So that's why when we talk about a graduation thing, this is what we mean. Anicca, dukkha, anatta are three basics which we need to understand. What is anicca? Anicca, everything changes. So go back to dana, everything changes. What I thought was very valuable 5 years down the track is not. So things are changing, anicca. Dukkha, because everything is changing, yeah, I suffer. I suffer because I cannot hold on to what I want. All right? What I want, I cannot hold. That's the nature. I change and that object changes as well. All right. If I understand that, I will practice renunciation. I will go on holding on. I won't go on holding on to things I don't want. I don't need. Okay. Anatta is very, very important. Yeah. Anatta is understanding, which only Buddhism teaches, by the way. Yeah. Anatta is non-self. Non-self, our biggest enemy is our false understanding, yeah, that we are real. Okay, we will come to that in a minute. Okay, what's next? Let's come to the four noble truths. The first one, dukkha. You see, what is fantastic about the teaching of the Buddha is, we just went through this, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra. He had spent millions of lifetimes going through trying to understand the nature of dukkha, the nature of dharma and all that. And in this enlightenment, it all falls into place. And when it all falls into place, yeah, he is able to reduce what we call the 84,000. 84,000 is a way of saying that he knew everything about the universe, what we call Dharma. Dharma is the entirety of the very complex. As I said, it comes from different points, all doesn't have any system to it. But the Buddha's enlightenment consisted of his being able to reduce those 84,000 units to simple 4 words. And these 4 words are dukkha, samodaya, nirodha, magga. Now that requires a fantastic mind. Those of us who are teachers will know this. How we can get such a complex thing and reduce it to something so simple, and from there build again. So when the Buddha was approaching these 5 ascetics, first he had to get them to a correct frame of mind. What was their frame of mind? Their frame of mind was that this suffering is caused by God, and this suffering is a punishment for all that I have done. And so if I want to please the God, and if I want to escape from suffering, I must torture the body. This is what the 5 ascetics believed. And they left him because they thought he was not suffering enough. At one time, it is that the books say he was a champion sufferer. He was more suffering than the 5 of them. So they all kowtowed to him. But when he realized the futility of that, and he started following the noble the middle path, they left him. Now he has to bring them back to his frame of mind. All right. So he says, okay, I agree with you, there is suffering. All right, although you say that suffering is caused by an external factor, yeah, at least you agree that all living beings take suffering as their biggest enemy. Okay, that's our starting point. So he puts the listener and himself on the same ground. Okay, he puts them, and then he says, there is suffering. Again, as I told you, there is suffering is different from you must suffer. When people look at Buddhists, they say we only talk about suffering, suffering, suffering. All right. And that is not true. We talk about suffering, but we are the happiest people. Why are we the happiest people? Because we understand that this suffering is there, and there is a way of overcoming this suffering by our own effort and by developing our wisdom rather than by developing rituals. So he puts them on the right track. How do we see dukkha as dukkha? Some people deem dukkha as dukkha, and some people see it as sukha. Very important point. All over the world, yeah, people don't understand that what they say is happiness. Yeah, what they say is happiness is actually in the final analysis a suffering in itself. Let's take the child. A young couple has just got married, and the wife has just given birth to a baby boy. Oh, wow. You know, I'm the father of a baby boy. My name, Samarawickrama, etc., etc. Can go on forever. Wow. I am so happy. Give everybody churut. You know, I am so happy. I am now the father of a boy. Good. You're very happy. But in that happiness, the Buddha teaches us, is the seed of suffering. This boy doesn't remain a baby. He becomes a teenager. What can be more suffering than having a teenager? Okay, but don't tell that to a teenager. He won't see that. See? But whatever, and in many discourses in the Buddha's own lifetime, there were a lot of people who were seeing the unhappiness as happiness. And you straight away can agree with me when what we don't see. Now, the first job of the Buddha, as with the 5 ascetics, was to understand to see suffering in its totality. If you are just talking about suffering, then it is a problem. Yeah. Some people see suffering as suffering. But what is suffering, they see as happiness. What is happiness, they see as suffering. This is happening all over the world, especially now in the United States. Yeah, with the elections coming on, and you can see it's too difficult to understand that. In the inessential, they deem as essential. Yeah, our problem with life is we do not see life as unsatisfactory. Okay, and that we need to go beyond that. Yeah. Now, Buddhism has been accused of being a very negative religion because we say our first noble truth is suffering. All right. Now, what we need to explain is that although the Buddha says there is suffering and you go home with that, you say there is suffering and go home, yeah, it is a very negative religion. But the Buddha says, yes, there is suffering, but I have an answer to that suffering. I have a way of overcoming that suffering. Not by going to heaven, as other religions would tell us, not by going to heaven, because that in that happiness is also suffering. You go to heaven, you will still die and you will still come. So happiness is still suffering there. Yeah. But the Buddha says, if you understand the way I see the world, if you understand that, you will see that while there is suffering, there is an end to that suffering. And this suffering can be ended not by appealing to a God or some other power, but it is in my own hands to convert that suffering into happiness here and now. That's a very important point, that you do not see suffering as something in another life, but something that can be ended in this life itself. You don't need to wait to die to go to heaven. You don't need to die to end your suffering. You can end your suffering here. And that is the crucial, basic teaching of the Buddha. There is suffering. That suffering can be ended. That's the first two. I'm sorry. There is suffering. And then he identifies the cause of that suffering. What is that cause of suffering? We already touched on that. The cause of suffering is wrong understanding, seeing the world from a wrong point of view. All right. Where is that wrong point of view? That wrong point of view starts with me, where I talk about a me. I talk about an I, an Atma. The five ascetics believed very strongly in an I. In fact, the last thing that goes when you are going towards sainthood is the ending of the I, because it's so strong. For millions and millions of years of evolution, we have developed this sense of I, this sense of existence within ourselves. To get rid of it is very, very difficult. And the Buddha, even for the Buddha, the last thing that went was his sense of I, which really is not there. What do I mean by the I is not there? Because of our ignorance, because our inability to see things as they really are, I mistake what is not there for something real. Now, so I see this something not real as an I. The moment I see an I see a my attachment. What do I see as an eye? Eyes, nose, ears, taste, smell, all of these have come together to create a sense of something real. But when you really, really think about it and look at it, is there a real person there? Because of our memory, because of our way of looking at life, over the years, from the time I was born, my favorite question always used to be, where is this cute little baby, yeah, that was born in Saramban 84 years ago? Where is that cute little baby? It has become this cute little old man talking to you. But when this cute little baby became cute old man, where did cute little baby go? Did my mother put me in a little cardboard box and every birthday take out that this is you 1 year old, this is you 2 years old, this is you? It was simply a good word used by Buddhists, a mirage. A mirage looks real, but in reality, it isn't. And because of our ignorance, we take it as a pool of water, a mirage. But actually, it is not there. Okay? So when these different aspects of me, these different energies of me come together to create a false sense of I create a false sense of my food, my eyes, my this, my that, and I keep grasping. Now, this is not real. What I am grasping at is not real either. Here is me. Here is me grabbing this $100 million. But the $100 million is not real. I am not real. Api na asap na tangkap asap. So two realities, two non-realities are grasping each other. There is suffering because in my sense of not really seeing things as they are, I am grasping at things which can never be satisfied. So dukkha, one meaning of dukkha is non-satisfactoriness. We are all the time chasing after things we cannot get. And therefore, we are frustrated. We are frustrated because of our ignorance. In our ignorance, we have created an I. That I has created a self. That self has made us selfish. We are grasping. It is as simple as that to explain. But to see that, it took a Buddha. There is suffering. That suffering is created by craving. That craving is created by ignorance, which creates an I. Do you see the connection? Suffering created by craving, craving created by ignorance. First half of the equation. The second half of the equation is the positive. Yes, there is suffering, okay, but that suffering can be ended. It is as simple as that. Simple, get rid of your eye. It's not that simple. All right. So that is the conundrum. That is the difficulty that we have to work on. And all our practice leads to help us to destroy the sense of I. Once you have destroyed the sense of I, automatically the mirage disappears. We always think that when we attain nirvana, yeah, we go somewhere, we attain something. No. What happens when the mirage disappears? There was a mirage, there was a mirage. It was something. Don't say there was nothing. There was a mirage, but that mirage disappears. All right. And when that mirage disappears, the original state of your mind, that is what. So attaining nirvana, yeah, is waking up to the reality of no Atma. That's where we went off from. Dukkha is created by Atma. Atma in reality is not there. When we see that there is nothing there, there is not Atma but Anatma. When we see that, that is Nirvana. You no physical transference. When the Buddha gained enlightenment at the age of 35, that moment, nothing happened. No lights came, all this thunder and lightning. No. It's poetic way of saying it. What happened was a psychological state of mind, which is very ordinary, and it can happen with anybody. When that happens, yeah, the second part comes into play. Dukkha, Samodaya, Nirodha is the ending of Lobha, Dosa, Moha, the ending of greed. That greed, where does it clinging? Yeah, where does that greed come from? Ignorance. All right, Moha, delusion that there is an I. Get rid of that delusion, yeah, and your frustration will end. You don't grasp. When you don't grasp, you cannot get frustrated. It's as simple as that. That is what we call nirvana. So you have dukkha, samodaya, nirodha, the ending of lobha, dosa, moha. And when that happens, yeah, you are free here and now. At the age of 35, the Buddha gained nirvana. He didn't go anywhere. He just had a mind shift. And that mind shift is what is the difference between us and other religions. Whether we go to heaven after that is immaterial. We don't go to heaven because there's no heaven. Even that is part of this, this mirage. Okay? Then that's not finished. There is suffering. That suffering is caused by craving and ignorance. Yeah, that ignorance can be ended. Yeah, I have a lovely line I want to share with you. It comes from the Udana. Monks, the Buddha is addressing the monks, and the monks, there is an unborn, an unbecome, an unmade, and uncompounded. There is an unborn, unbecome, unmade, uncompounded. This suffering that we are in, this samsara, yeah, is created, is there for us. But the Buddha, and this is the source of all our suffering. But beyond this, there is another state which is unborn, unmade, uncompounded. To you, very important point that you see here, everything is real, and this is all the suffering. But there is another state which is the opposite of all of this. This is the mirage. Visualize for yourself the absence of a mirage. The Buddha says, if we are pessimistic, if we are only talking about suffering, we are only talking about the made, the compounded, the coming together. There is a state which is the opposite of all of that. He says, if there was no such state, then it is negative. Then it is pessimistic. But I tell you, there is a state which is the opposite of samsara. Everything that we experience here, the opposite of that is there. And he says, we can achieve that. And we can achieve that with our own minds, with our own intelligence. We don't need help from even the Buddha. And what is it? Three things: Sila, Samadhi, Panya. You have to develop. We go back to the beginning of our graduated discourses. We go back to develop your virtue. Develop your virtue means understand that your body must not be given everything that it craves for. Yeah. Not by denying, but by letting go. Not by denying. Denying, don't do this, this is bad, this is wrong, this is wrong. You get more and more frustrated. But when you understand what is it that is craving for this extra liquor, what is it that's craving for this cigarette? When I understand that there is nothing here, I give up. When I give up, I relinquish. The Buddha says happiness is letting go. And when that letting go comes with understanding, then we are on the right path. So we practice the virtues, controlling the 5 senses as the first step, sila. When you have virtue and you have your physical under control, which is easy because it's the first thing that we see, then we control our mind. Then that is the second stage. This is where only Buddhism emphasizes to that extent that not virtue alone. Virtue is only a stepping stone to controlling the body. If your mind is full of anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, selfishness, lust, yeah, if your mind is full of that, your mind cannot focus. So then when you have your mind under control, sila, your samadhi under control, your mental, then you have created the condition for wisdom. Sila, samadhi, panya. What is wisdom? Right understanding. What is right understanding? Seeing things as we're coming back in the circle, seeing things as they really are. So when you have really things as they are, then you have the right intention. I give up for the right reason. I practice virtue for the right reason. The wrong reason, to go to heaven. The right reason, to destroy the illusion of I. Okay? So we have the 4 noble truths going, see, dukkha, samodaya, nirodha, magga. Okay? And now, if you are prepared to wait until 2 o'clock, we'll say what the other slides say. I think we have reached the end of the 4 noble truths. Okay? Sa, sa.